Okay, so this guy, he's Pai Chin Quinn. That's his name.
Chinese?
Pai, yeah, Chinese. He's from China.
Oh, Chinese.
Yeah, he used to be a math teacher and an enthusiast painter. So he was not he used to just do it because he used to love painting. He was a very established painter in China. But when he came to America, he actually studied art again in one of the art colleges. But he was not finding any fame in his artwork. And his room was full of all the paintings that he was doing. And he was very good at copying stuff. Okay, so he had done the same painting over 10 times. And these are like your roadside art shops. He would just sell it to them. And that's how the Bargantino's, the boyfriend, found him. Because he would go around looking at art shops to see the paintings. And then he would pick up the paintings which were very good. And then try to sell them as fakes, as originals. So that's how he found him, because this guy was doing these paintings and just putting them, getting at very low value, just putting them in shops. Okay, and it comes from a tradition in China where an artist is considered a good artist if he is able to copy well. So that's the background of where he came from. And Chinese artists are known to be able to copy other artists to a very high degree of likeness.
He was doing it for his own pleasure, not to make money.
Yes, till the time Bargantino met him.
Oh.
He encouraged him to start signing it with the signature of the original artist so that he can do art forgeries. Okay, so this guy did that, and this is what I'm talking about, that Chinese artists, it is a tradition in China to value artists who can copy very well. To be honest, that's pretty much what you do in portrait drawing or architecture drawing. You copy what you're looking at. So, but they took copying to a whole different level. And then this guy comes to America and he's not getting any value for his art. His art is good, but nobody's giving him any value because who's he? Who cares who this channel is? So he's trying to survive by doing a little bit work here and there. And then this guy finds him and he tells him, your work is great, I will buy it at a higher value than what you're getting, but I need you to sign it with Mark Rothko's signature or Jackson Pollock's signature. So this guy would basically create the painting as if Jackson Pollock is doing it today. He would create a pristine painting, and then Bargantino's would take those paintings and start roughing them up, putting cracks in them, putting mud in those cracks, to make it look aged. So Bargantino's would age the paintings, put some, scrape the painting a little bit, smudge it a little bit, so that it looks like it is an old painting sitting in somebody's basement, and we found it and we brought it out. So that's where the crime happens. And the moment Pai Chin Quinn agreed to sign it with the original artist, he became a criminal.
He became what?
A criminal. And this guy brought it to Glafira, and Glafira brought it to Anne Friedman, and that's how the whole thing happened. So there's a whole, so what happened is, when these guys started doing this, they were paying Pai Chin Quinn very little as compared to what they were getting from Anne Friedman. And Pai Chin Quinn was a disillusioned artist, so he used to actually go to exhibitions and art sales and all that. And eventually he started finding his paintings because he could see and recognize his paintings, right? Even if it's a Mark Rothko, he could, an artist can look at, oh, that's mine. So he started finding, he found a few of his artworks in this show, the Armory show, whichever, and he started recognizing that, oh, these are my paintings. And then the price tag on them was what Knoedler was putting. So he probably sold it for a few $1,000, and Bargantino's and Glafira sold it for a few $100,000, and then Anne Friedman is selling it for a few $1 million. And then the artist comes in and sees, wow, $8 million painting, which is mine. which I sold for a few $1,000. So he went back to them and he started asking, I want more money. So that started happening. And then, this is to show you the divide between how much Glafira was selling it and how much Knoedler was selling it. So just because that painting is in this gallery, its price goes up. That speaks to how the industry works. And then a few examples of that. And Anne Friedman is basically at the highest point in her career. She's sold around $80 million worth of paintings. And this magazine called Test Shed, it published the fake Rothkos 6 times. So this is just, because they would publish magazines and the fakes were published 6 times in their whatever weeklies, monthlies, annuals, whatever. And Anne Friedman is just, oh wow, I'm the greatest. She's just, booming. She's just becoming a celebrity because of the number of paintings she's selling.
How much money does she make?
No idea. She's an employee of Knoedler, so she has a salary, but
she
her salary
commission.
keeps, she gets commissions, and her salary kept going up exponentially because she was doing such a great job. So she was getting appraisals, and I don't exactly know how much. And she was pretty rich. She was doing good. And eventually, this gentleman, Jack Levy, bought this Jackson Pollock from her for $2 million, and he started, having some doubts about this. So this is the first time that this guy went to an organization in America called IFR. So this is the International Foundation of Art and Research, to get a forensics check on it. So what has happened till now, the provenance has been checked, and it seems that it's true. The story behind the ownership, the look and feel, the style, the visual, how do you call it?
Presentation.
The visual presentation seems to be great, but till Jack Levy, nobody actually did a forensics examination, and this speaks to the psychology of men, human beings, that we want to believe that it's true.
We believe what we want to believe.
Yeah, we want to believe, so we don't go all the way
We all
to
do
check.
that.
Because oh my God, what business, what fame, what reputation, we want to believe that these are true. So they didn't go all the way. And then this guy bought a painting and he got it out. And he found some strokes of yellow in the painting, which Jackson Pollock never used. So then he brought in these guys, and there was a lady by the name Sharon, and she said, he told her, let's do a forensics on this. And so that's the thing about abstract art. It's easier than
What we said.
taking
Yeah,
a
believe what
Mona
you want
Lisa
to
or
believe.
the realistic paintings of Caravaggio.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people actually do master studies. I personally do master studies where I try to copy works of masters, and it is part of education, art education, where people learn how to, the human anatomy and all that still life, where they actually try to copy the style of Caravaggio and Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci. Even Picasso, if you look at his sketchbook, he does a lot of realistic artwork in that. Yeah, but that they took it to a different level. They didn't only learn from it; they actually started selling in their name. So that's where things went wrong. So yeah, they did all the back check of the provenance. So again, the provenance work, all the literature about the thing worked, even the amount of degradation that the paintings had, it seemed that it was the right time when the paintings were made. But then when they actually started analyzing the pigments, they found traces of pigments which didn't even exist in 1965. And these were done in 1949. So those pigments were not even invented in that time. So this is a painting of Jackson Pollock, and
How can you possibly copy that?
so you don't copy the painting, you copy the style, and you make another painting and you say that this is Jackson Pollock. Okay. So when they started doing those, they realized the hints are coming in that no, this is not a real painting. This is not a painting. And then they went into the actual forensics, which involves X-rays, infrareds, carbon dating, and things. The moment you access carbon dating, it actually tells you the year of manufacture of the pigment, the canvas, the frame, everything.
Oh my God.
And then immediately you're caught. So this is where I go back to the first slide, where this says that with today's technology, you cannot forge. You will be caught immediately. Because after this case, nobody touches a painting without forensic examination. Okay.
Yeah.
So this was the painting, and this is a comparison with an original.
Oh.
So you actually cannot tell it apart just by looking at it. And the thing about copying Jackson Pollock is the easy thing was that he used to not put his brush on the paper or canvas.
Yeah.
He used to always drip the paint. So there is no actual stroke to copy. All you have to copy is how he's moving his hand, how long he's holding at one place and how long. And he's one of the most well documented painters. People have videos of him painting. So you can actually see how he's moving and where he's stopping and how long he's stopping, and people could actually learn by looking at him painting to mimic his style of painting. And being abstract, there was literally there was nothing to copy. There were just layers and layers and layers of just dripping paint. And Jackson Pollock at that time was not only very well documented, he was considered the pinnacle of artistry. Literally the greatest painter ever in the history of America.
Oh, yeah.
What does it say? Is he the greatest living painter in the United States?
No.
Okay, so he was so visible that it's very easy to copy. And he did artwork which was very easy to copy. And then, so IFR then started releasing statements saying that we have done a verification of the work and we do not accept it as a work of the work. So they actually didn't really deny it, but they said that we don't accept it. They are not saying this is a fake. They're just saying that we don't accept it. So with all these, this one, Anne Friedman is sending letters to Jack Levy that I know that IFR is trying to muddy the waters, and it's not true. We have done experts, blah blah blah, everything we've done. And he comes back saying that no, forensics, hello. it's not visual. We have gone into the pigments, and we know that it's not an original. So there was a lot of back and forth. And then Jack Levy just went up to her and said, I want my money back. And Anne Friedman returned his money. $2 million. Here you go. Without any she said, fine. You think it's a fact? Take it back, give me the painting back. And she promptly went on to resell the painting at a price of 11 million. So she gave the 2 million back, and she's back in the market saying it's an original Jackson Pollock. 11 million. Understand? So that's why everybody is saying that she's not clean. Somebody came and told her it's a fake. She still did not. She chose not to. So she's because she thinks she's invincible. She's at a state of mind where she thinks I can do no wrong and nobody can touch me. So I'll take a fake painting back and sell it again. And one of the reasons that she said that I don't believe you are forensics because the IFR organization went to one individual to do the forensics test. And she said, you did not employ a company, a forensics company to do the test. You employed one guy. I don't believe you. Okay, that is what she said back to them. That it's just one guy. Who's he? But chemicals are chemicals. Whether one guy is doing it or whether a whole team of people are doing it. So eventually, when Anne Friedman started behaving like this, people went to the federal bureau and they brought in the FBI. And once FBI got involved, then they brought in the team of experts. They had a whole lab of experts. So, the second case was this French fellow. His name is Pierre Lagrange. Okay, this is the statistics. So Knoedler bought it for 1.9 million, sold it for 17 million to this guy. Again, very established businessman. And he went back to her. He had very good relationships with her, and he bought the painting, and he got visibly offended by the fact that she had fooled him. But she kept saying, no, it's real. I'm not, this is all fake. And he said, no, I got it tested also. It's not real. So there's an exchange that happened between her and him, where he came to meet her in a restaurant or hotel, and when he comes in, she goes to greet him. Hello, Mr. Lagrange, it's so pleasant to meet you. And he says in his French accent, don't be so sure. This is not going to be pleasant. So he got very mad at her. He really took it to, he really upset him very much that he got cheated with this. So he said that, I don't want my money back, I'm taking him to court. So him and, a lot of exchange happened. And, so at that very time when all this is happening, and the owner, Mr. Hammer, realizes that this is happening, immediately he fires Anthony. He doesn't fire her. He tells her to take a leave of absence. At this moment, we need to take a leave of absence. And they promptly close the gallery. 165-year-old gallery close. Okay. So it is with great sadness that we must announce the closing of Knoedler and Company. Now everybody is looking at this and thinking, wow, they knew. They knew. And they kept doing it till eyebrows were raised. And that went on for decades. So, this is where the first time the world heard about all this happening. The New York Post released an article saying possible forging of modern art is investigated. Pierre Lagrange is leading it, sued the gallery, forensics analysis, Federal Bureau of Investigation involved, the Knoedler Gallery abruptly closed. Just in the middle of the week, it's closed. Abruptly, just like that. Expert forgeries. While all this is happening, Alfred is still saying, no, these are not forgeries. Because the moment she accepts, she's a criminal. So she has to protect herself. And she kept saying, defending herself based on the experts who looked at the paintings and said these are original. The problem is that now that forensics has declared that these are not original, why are you still claiming that these are original? Say I did a mistake. But she's not ready to do it. And out of all these things, so everybody started going back to the gallery and asking their money back. And they started giving the money back because they didn't want to go to court. But out of all these, 10 of them went to court. So one was the dishonest, second was Pierre Lagrange, and then there were 8 others, collectors and studios, who actually took them to court. Okay. So while this is happening, the first thing that they do is they capture Glafira Rosales, because Anthony said she bought the painting store. So FBI nabs her. And the moment FBI nabs her, and the New York Times releases this article, this guy comes to know, something is happening with my paintings. So he promptly leaves his house in the US where he was staying, and he goes back to China before anybody can come in. So by the time the FBI raided his house and found, went into his garage and found all the, the brushes, the paints, the canvases, and unfinished paintings and paint. The time that this is going to court, only Glafira Rosales is in jail. Okay, a boyfriend went back to Spain before all this, and these are countries that when FBI approached them, they were not ready to extradite their citizen. China refused, Spain refused. But they are not going to send a citizen to be jailed in your country. There you go. They are protecting their. So he's back in Shanghai, and he's enjoying he goes back to his life. And the Chinese government is not ready to extradite him. So no, we are not giving you our citizen. Yeah. So Jackson Pollock's. Then eventually there was a case made, and all the paintings that were faked and sold were listed. So Franz Klein, Jackson Pollock, Clifford. So many. There's so many. Rothko's. And this is the official document of the lawsuit. Desaulis versus everybody involved. So Glafira, Desaulis, everybody. The Knoedler company. And one of the reasons that the Desaulis didn't want to let it go is because Domenico was involved in a business with Sotheby's. So it's not just that he bought a fake painting. Most of the paintings were sold through his company, Sotheby's. So it became a very big issue for him. He's like, wow, you fooled me. I'm not going to let you go. I'm going to take you to court. I'm going to put you in jail. So he was the driving force. He and Pierre Lagrange were the driving force of the lawsuit. And then 8 others. But eventually, out of the 10, 9 of them were settled out of court, including Pierre Lagrange. The sailors were the only people who actually continued the case right up to the end. But not to the end, up to the end. I'll tell you what happened. So these, what you're going to see now are some artist impressions on the ongoings in the court. So some artist was in the court and he actually did some drawings, which are not available. So the paintings, so it happened in the highest court. It was a big show, all media cover and everything. It was a big halla.
So what year is this roughly?
This is 2011.
2011.
Went to court, yeah.
Oh.
And then this artist, Anne Friedman, with her lawyers, Eleanor Desaulis went on to testify, and she became very emotional because she said, we thought Anne was our friend and she cheated us, and she started crying and screaming on the podium, and a lot of drama happened there. And then everybody's there with their lawyers, and the case went on, and both sides, the defendant and the prosecutor, put their arguments and whatnot. And then as the forensics people came in and showed their proof, and the lawyers argued with each other, testimonies were questioned, blah blah, a lot of stuff happened. But in all this, Anne Friedman was the coolest one. She used to come there all decked up in her fur coats and whatnot, and she used to just come there and enjoy the drama. She knew that at some point of time she will have to go on the stand, but till that time she's not taking any, I'm protected. I got certificates and signed documents and everything. It doesn't matter what I behaved like. I was only the dealer. I got everything examined, and then only I sold it. So she was not bothered about anything. Now this went on till the point of time when the prosecution actually called Anne Friedman to testify. So tomorrow she has to go on stand, and one day before that, the Desaulis settled with her.
And it was against her or the Knoedler?
Everybody. They settled. They went in. They took whatever they were offering, and they settled out of court. And one day before, Anne Friedman had to go on stand. So then again it becomes a conspiracy theory. And Desaulis said we wanted to bring the event out in public notice, and that's all we wanted, and we've done that, and the gallery is closed, the forgers are gone, blah blah blah. We've done our work. We don't care. We get our money back, and because Anne Friedman had a good case.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had a good case, and she had good lawyers. She was very rich. she could have, there's a chance that she could have not been convicted. So this,
I mean, how can you probably prove what's in her mind?
yeah,
If you know
that's circumstantial, you can't use it in court. So there was no physical evidence that she knowingly
Yeah.
sold those paintings. And that's when, these guys knew this from the beginning, but they said that, they said that we wanted a public event. And we did that, and we are satisfied with what is happening, and we want to not pursue it anymore. And literally, so they got together and made a deal out of court. And literally the only person who was caught and convicted was Glafila Rosales. Because Pai Shin-kun was in China, Burlington was in Spain, Anne Friedman and these guys, the rich people, made a deal amongst themselves and got out of court. And ultimately she was the only one who was convicted, but her punishment was only time served. That means that till now, whatever time you have served in jail is your punishment.
Is what?
Is your punishment. So you don't go to jail from now on.
Oh,
It
so
is-
she didn't get a long sentence?
yeah,
after.
it's just time served.
Yeah, okay.
How,
So-
I didn't understand that.
So time served is a sentence in which they caught you at a point of time,
Oh.
and then the trial happened, and till today,
Yeah.
when the day the judge is giving the judgment,
Yeah.
that is your punishment, that you've been in jail.
Oh, she was in jail all that time?
Yeah, they caught her. She was the first person they caught.
Okay.
If
Okay.
she wasn't necessarily in
years
jail,
and
she
years.
might just be in custody.
Yeah, custody. Yeah, she didn't go to prison.
No.
But there's a thing called a jail and a prison. So jail is where you are held till you are on trial, and once you're convicted, you are sent to a prison. So jail is like a halfway.
Sounds like
Or
a career.
she could be in her own house, but
No, she was in custody.
but
Not house custody, but in a proper jail. But so she was given time served and she was let go.
Okay.
I wonder what she's doing now.
Yeah, she's gone back to being a waitress.
Oh,
Really? Yeah, and Anne Friedman has gone back to being an art dealer. She opened her own dealership.
She
that's-
went back to being a waitress?
An art dealer, Anne Friedman. And she has connections with rich people.
Can we buy some Chinese art from her?
Yeah, you can.
But what about this big museum of Mark Roscoe that's all fake?
Yeah, it just they brought all of those down.
They
I mean,
changed
by the
the
time this trial got over, that artist was dead, so nobody cared. The owner of the Byler studio was dead.
They just changed the name from Rothko Room to XYZ
Yeah.
from some other.
Passion room. Who cares? I mean, yeah. So it just goes away. The rich people are never touched. They always get away.
really?
And that's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
that's pretty much the length and breadth of.
Okay. So
Yeah,
that's finished.
yeah. The present day, I was going to show you a few videos, but yeah, those will take another half an hour. Just to do that. We are already almost exhausted. I mean, if you guys want to see, I have a couple of videos.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
stay.
Yeah. So one video is about he's an art forger, and it's a look inside his world and how he thinks, and he does art forgery and he got away with it. And if you want to see, it's like a 5-minute video.
Yeah.
The cause painting here, SpongeBob SquarePants, I believe it's called.
Art sales and auctions have been breaking records.
At 850, no, and your bid, sir, with a round of applause.
In some cases, collectors spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a single.
Okay, so this particular painting is a painting of Jesus, and there was this guy who had this painting, and he was going around, exhibiting and getting commission of those exhibitions. And then he actually exhibited it at one of the galleries, who actually did a forensics check on this painting, and they found out that this was an original Leonardo da Vinci painting. Yeah. So what do they do about it? They buy the painting from the guy. Okay, at a price, very small price. Because that's what he thought it was. He thought it was just another painting. They buy it from him, they put it on exhibition, and they start claiming it's the original Leonardo da Vinci, and they sell it for millions.
They could have given
Was it true?
20% or
They did forensics on it because they just they got a doubt. This is too good. Why don't we get it checked?
But they could have been more generous.
Yeah, they
I
won't.
mean, they can afford it.
They won't be. If they start doing that, they won't be rich anymore. So they fooled the guy, they bought the painting from him for whatever price he was ready to sell it for. And then they put it out as an original Leonardo da Vinci painting, and they sold it at Sotheby's for $450 million. So this was one of the case studies in how the art industry works for the rich.
Hundreds of millions of dollars on a single piece.
$400 million is the bid, and the piece is sold.
And with all that money at stake, many of these collectors pay for forensic and expert testing to ensure they're getting the real deal. That's because where there's money, there are scammers.
Right in here. Right in here. You gotta get right in there.
Ken Perani knows a thing or two about forging art. He's been doing it for decades. That is, until 1998, when the FBI began a 5-year investigation into Ken.
See, the modern paintings take a different type of aging than an antique painting.
He had passed off his forgeries of 19th century artists in major international auction houses.
2 FBI men walked in that door.
What was your explanation?
I simply told them that I was very lucky at finding them in flea markets.
Did you have your...
He told the FBI that he was very lucky to find them in a flea market.
Oh, okay.
So he didn't say that he had done it because he had signed it with the original artist name. So I just found it. I didn't make them.
Buttersworth's hanging all over the house?
Luckily,
as they
no.
asked you how you got all these
Luckily, no. But if they would have opened the door back there, they would have said, we've just hit the jackpot.
He perfected imitations of James E. Buttersworth, a 19th century English painter. The 5-year investigation dried up, and Ken is now safely past the statute of limitations on his crimes.
How many people have fakes of yours? Let's just take the Buttersworth, for example. How many people have this in their home and think they have a Buttersworth original?
Well, it's hard to say. I've painted so many of them through the years, but put it this way, every so often one turns up in a magazine or a catalog, and it's like bumping into an old friend.
He says that he's painted so many that he doesn't realize how many of his fakes are out there. But every once in a while, one of his paintings is in a magazine as an original. It's like bumping into an old friend.
So what motivates someone to forge art?
I didn't plan to become an art forger. It kind of like happened by default, and I found that I had a hidden talent for it, and it gave me a very exciting life in a very quick way. I liked the money. I spent a lot of money. When I had a good sale, I would go out to Ireland, stay at castle hotels, horseback riding, read books, go to a lot of fancy restaurants. The life it gave me was something that I would not otherwise have had.
This could be a great fake right here. Really great fake. Completely original composition.
Today, instead of selling his work under another artist's name, he legally sells authentic reproductions to people who want high art without the high prices.
The irony of the situation is I'm doing better now than I ever did in the old days because I could sell so many more and times have changed so I could get a whole lot more, even as fakes.
How do you label your paintings now?
I don't. I have people that want me to sign my own name on my fakes, and I refuse to do that because for me to put Ken Perani on that Buttersworth would compromise the integrity of the fake.
That sentence is compromise the integrity of the fake.
Right.
If you were starting out right now, do you think you could have the same career that you had?
I think I could, yeah. In spite of the scrutiny today, I could see many areas where you could stay under the radar.
Forgers follow trends, and trends go hot and cold.
Lot number 5A is the Kerry James Marshall.
Today, interest in black artists who used to be ignored by the elite art world has shot up, thanks to record-setting sales like P. Diddy's $21 million purchase of a Kerry James Marshall painting. Early this year, some New York gallerists warned that they were seeing more forgeries and fakes of Black artists' work.
Some galleries in New York have recently said that there's been a rise in fakes around Black American artists' work. Artists who are working in the 20th century and maybe now have passed. Why would that be?
Newly appreciating artists are particular targets, especially if they're being introduced into the sales rooms. When you buy something in an auction house, it has now graduated to an entirely new level of investment quality. So when you get in on the ground floor of something that's rapidly appreciating, there isn't that much expertise there. That's a prime target. That got a bullseye on it. Let's just go and exploit that.
Do you think that the victimology or the hurt is any different in the case of Black American artists?
Yeah.
So if someone is going out and forging their work now,
Right.
or changing their legacy, just as their legacy is starting to get some attention,
yeah.
does that change your perspective on sort of who gets hurt by this and what it means to forge?
Personally, I wouldn't do it. Imitation is the greatest form of flattery. The artists that I targeted, in 99% of all cases, were long dead, but I feel that I paid a tribute to them. I say my work speaks for itself. You could take whatever position you want, and I will go on creating these pictures for many more years to come. And where those paintings will be 20 or 30 years from now is anybody's guess.
Yeah, so that also gives you an insight into how a forger thinks. You know, they have their own ideas about what is right and what is wrong, and you know, everybody has a justification for what they're doing, and he thinks that he is actually giving tribute while he's living in a castle and doing horseback riding and whatnot. You know, so yeah, it's this video is particularly interesting because it shows the psychology of the integrity of the fake. Yeah, so these are the 4 or 5 steps through which they do forensics. So first the provenance is researched, then the visual analysis is done through eye, then photography and ultraviolet analysis, then X-ray fluorescence analysis, and then now they can even do microscopy. So they can actually go into the pigments and find out microscopic details about it. I have another video which is a bit longer about how the art forgery is analyzed forensically.
Have you ever been out to a store and you come across a famous painting, or at least something that you think might be made by a famous artist, but you're not sure, due to the price, and you'd like to know, is it like a forgery? You know what? There's a process behind that, and it involves some really crazy science. You gotta check this out. Follow me.
This episode is funded by the Glick Fund and the Crystal Bahan Family Foundation, who inspire philanthropy and creativity.
All right, so we're down here in the basement, which is actually a fascinating part of your museum, by the way. So is this the piece that you were discussing that we're going to kind of overview?
This is the painting. This is the painting that we suspect is a forgery.
So tell me about the artist.
Well, so the artist that we think is responsible for this piece is Icilio Federico Ioni, and he has sort of a fascinating life history as well. He actually was sort of classically trained in all the proper techniques, so he was capable of completely making one of these paintings from scratch like you would have in the Middle Ages.
We usually begin with just a close visual examination of the artwork. So just to describe what we're looking at, again, this is a medieval painting, or supposedly a medieval painting. We would expect that the paint is going to be egg tempera from this time period, so it's pigment mixed into egg yolk. It's on a wooden panel, so this is a panel painting. It's a relatively large wooden panel. You can see the thickness.
Yeah, it's really thick.
So we're looking at relatively low magnification. And so what you see here is the ground layer. That white material would have been the original layer that's placed onto the wooden panel. The red layer that you see in there is material called bole. It's kind of the glue that will cause the gold to stick And then as it is aged or artificially aged, all of these layers begin to break apart and the cracks form. So you can see several of them here in this detail image. And then inside of those cracks, you'll notice they're quite dark.
Yeah, really dark.
And so that is, under a natural condition, just an accumulation of dirt and grime and old varnish. A forger might want to enhance these cracks to make them really pop by pushing something into those crevices, perhaps a pigment or a dark resin material. So what you're looking at here is just a diffuse reflection image using visible light, what you saw when we were looking at it on the table. But then if you move that light source to the far extreme, it will begin to cast shadows, and it gives you an idea of all the surface deformations that exist in this painting. You had mentioned earlier that it's a highly textured piece, and so you really begin to pick out some of that texture, examples of the cracks that are running through the surface, the crack lure that is in the paint. Now what you're looking at is a fluorescence image. So we've shined a black light onto the surface, and that ultraviolet radiation is going to be absorbed by the varnish and the paint materials, and then it's going to be re-emitted in the visible, and that's what we're looking at here. And it really helps us to pick out some things about the condition of the piece. For instance, you can note certain areas that show up different, where under visible light they look the same. This tells us this is a modern intervention where someone has done some retouching, perhaps of a damaged area in that gilding. Now what you're looking at is an X-ray of the painting. So this is an X-ray just like you would have in the doctor's office to look at a broken arm, but instead of looking at bones and flesh, we're looking at the distribution of the heavy metal pigments in the artist's paints, as well as the density differences in the wood, and you can see examples of metal that have been driven into the wooden panel. Here, for instance, is a modern-looking nail that's going right up through the bottom of the panel. Other nails here are being used to attach this component of the frame around the top. And then you can see those two wooden dowels that were protruding in the raking light image. You can actually see that they've been filled in, or they have a different density from the surrounding wood. An interesting thing that we noted here is the little tail end of a screw buried in the back of the panel, we assume. The head has been broken off or is missing, but you can see the threads of the screw, which of course would be a modern intervention. So this XRF spectrometer has an X-ray tube that's going to irradiate a small area of the sample, about the width of your hair, with X-rays. The instrument takes about 15 seconds, blowing some helium across the surface to get rid of all the room air, which would otherwise absorb our characteristic X-rays. We can identify lead, small amount of calcium, a big signal from barium. There's some zinc present. Looks like a little bit of chromium, and it looks like that pretty much accounts for it. Thinking this is a green earth, we would expect to see a certain suite of elements that show up in that mineral. So that's green earth.
Oh wow, okay.
Sort of an olive drab color, a yellowy brownish green. But curiously, in this area, we're seeing the element chromium. And chromium is not a component of green earth. In fact, chromium might appear in a more modern pigment, a chrome oxide or viridian green. And you can also tell the color is slightly different, and the sort of aqua teal of the viridian green more closely matches what we're seeing, especially when we looked at that under the microscope downstairs. So this continues to raise our suspicion that this may not be an ancient material, but might in fact be a material that was only available after the 1800s. And that little layer of paint, what we like to collect and call a cross-section, and then we'll pluck that little layered cake sample out. We mount it in an epoxy block, cut and polish it so that we can see the full history of the artwork from the conception to the finished product at the surface. We're looking at some images of that tiny flake of paint that Glynis took from the surface of the artwork.
So if you imagine that the painting is sort of like a cake or the Earth's crust, then what we're seeing here is the top layer, like the frosting, and then that red glaze layer, and then we have this pink layer, and then below it, this sort of translucent area is the gesso, so that would have been the ground layer. And then this is a really interesting cross-section because when I take my hand away, what we're seeing here is one of those deep cracks that we saw under the optical
the
microscope.
dark area.
Yeah, and so you can see that there's two kind of colors that are present, a dark brown, black, and then a lighter brown.
This is so hard for me to get, I mean, just, it looks huge, because I'm looking, like, it looks down, but like you said, this thing is just...
Yeah, so this scale bar is 20 microns, and that's about a fifth of the width of a human hair.
Now you remember that the blue pigment in the false color infrared was suggestive of ultramarine.
Yeah.
So for ultramarine, from a 1300s painting, we would expect the source to be lapis lazuli. We're essentially going to bounce a laser beam off of the surface of the pigment particles and measure its scattering. And that's going to become a molecular fingerprint for a particular compound, or in this case, a pigment.
And then after doing a library match, we see that we have an amazingly good match with the reference spectrum here in pink, and that's for ultramarine. It really is a very clear...
Oh, like exact match
Yes.
almost.
And so our spectrum is coming from a synthetic version of just the blue.
Gotcha.
But we can tell that it's synthetic, and that's interesting because it wasn't synthesized until 1826.
Oh, wow.
So-
Okay. That's like a huge red flag.
We provided some pretty clear evidence, physical evidence, that this cannot be a 1300s panel painting. There's the use of modern pigments throughout the full extent of the artwork, and they were just not available to an artist back in the 1300s. I think we're pretty much convinced that this is not what it purports to be.
Call it a day. Yeah, so thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for the presentation. It was great.
Oh, thank you. Yay! I hope my research was worth something. Yeah. And credit where credit is due. All information has been collected from various sources.
It's the pastiche.
Yeah, a pastiche. Yeah, it's a pastiche. The whole presentation is a pastiche. There you go. You said it. It's none of this is my intellectual property. Everything is stuff that I found on the internet and through documentaries and
Well, thank you for
Wikipedia and whatnot.
Thank you for it. It was really interesting.
I'm happy to hear that. Thank you so much for
But
coming.
tell them you also do animation and are doing that
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. I
Tell
screen
people about that.
animated movies once a month at the MNC, and I work with all of them to do film appreciation for animated movies that I screen once a month.